Hello, my name is Tara Brabazon and I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University, and welcome to vlog 145, the Midlife PhD. This has had so many requests, this vlog. I've had 6 separate requests for it, and it's my pleasure to deliver it to you for our new year. Hello, Happy New Year. Hope you're having a fantastic time. And I particularly want to speak directly to probably our largest sociological grouping at Flinders University. A remarkable group of students who were in full-time work and have left that full-time work but might be doing a part-time PhD. Our students who are doing a part-time PhD and reducing their hours, so a part-time working environment, but also these fantastic students who have had an incredibly successful career, often in education and health in particular, and then decide to leave that career and enroll in a full-time PhD. This is a spectacularly important and inspirational group, and what's remarkable to me is that this group is absolutely invisible in the literature. And as I've often said, what we're not talking about is more important than what we do talk about. So this invisibility is incredibly interesting to me, and we're going to render it visible this week. Can I say the literature on it is incredibly poor. There's a lot of journalism here, a lot of blogs, so we're not dealing with high quality refereed literature, but there's enough interesting material from career planning and career development in midlife that I'm going to deploy to, I hope, help us all work with and through this wonderful group. Now, the reason we've got this problem is that the image of the PhD student is really clear. It's also incredibly damaging. So let's do an experiment, shall we? Go into the font of all knowledge, which is clearly Google Images, and put in the phrase PhD student. And the result that will emerge from that inquiry is a young man, white, in a lab-based environment. That group of people is less than 10% of the students enrolled at Flinders University in our PhD program. But that image is really powerful, and it impacts on everything really, on the assumptions we have going into a PhD program, the assumptions we have going out of the PhD program, and also the professional development that we offer through it. So this is a damaging image. It warps, it distorts, and it renders the majority of our students invisible. And think about the consequences of that. Now, we have people who have a fantastically successful career and then leave that career and enter a PhD program. And that does transform the very nature of the PhD itself. And this is clearly an issue, and as always, our Flinders University students are ahead of the curve. As you know, as you've heard me report so often, the average age that a student starts at Flinders University in a PhD is 36 years of age, and that means they finish at 39 years of age, 36 to 39. Think about that age group, and that's the average. That's the average age. So what we are discussing in the vlog this week is not a minority issue, oh no. This is a majority issue that is invisible. How fascinating is that? And this issue will transform how we think about the very identity of PhD students. And while indeed those Google Images are dominated by our wonderful young men in the lab, big hi to our wonderful men and our wonderful women in the lab, you are fantastic, we adore you. But while all the attention is on that, we see those interesting outlier journalism articles which were picked up in my search as well. You know, all those fantastic 90-year-old men, 90-year-old women who graduate from a PhD program. I always remember it was Colette Bellier, I think, in 2016, who gained her PhD from France at 91 years of age. So there's also the attention in the literature on the 90-somethings who gain a PhD, and how fantastic is that group as well. And there's also that great group of students that I've supervised about 10 of in the last 12 months, of our students over the age of 65, indeed over the age of 70. Many of these students are enrolled in a PPP, a PhD by prior publication, and therefore the PhD is a capstone moment in their career. They've had a remarkable, innovative, expansive, really exciting career, And not at the end, but at a key point where a particular moment of their life is ending, a particular version of full-time work, they wish to do a PhD as a capstone moment. And again, an incredibly inspirational group. But again, that group, over 65, over 70, is different from what I am discussing today. And sadly, as I've stated, the literature is incredibly poor in enabling our discussion in this matter. There are 6 separate journalist articles that are titled, quote, "Is my PhD my midlife crisis?" End of quote. 6 articles, how innovative is that? Can I say, by the way, the whole idea, the cliche of a midlife crisis freaks me out. I think, what does that even mean? What are we learning about work and masculinity and femininity and sexuality in and through the phrase midlife crisis? We need to be having those bigger conversations, but that's a whole other issue. But clearly what's happening is that the 30 and 40 something PhD discussions are getting lost in this midlife crisis cliche. And this seems incredibly disrespectful to me. It is also, I believe, a radical misunderstanding of what is happening right now in work, in leisure, in families. We need to understand the radical changes to the workplace right now, and the midlife PhD is almost the canary in the mine of this discussion. Now, let's get into this sociology from what I've been able to find here. So in the United States, where the data set's pretty good, the older students, and they define older students in the United States as over 36 years of age, are dominated by women. And of the 6 requests I had for the vlog this week, they came from, let's say it together as a family, women. So the sociological characteristics of this group is resilient, they are pragmatic, they are risk takers, and they're also intellectually robust. So that's the characteristic of those students in this particular age group. And they are asking overtly, what can they do with the rest of their lives? And the PhD is part of a strategy, not as a crisis, but as the way to do something significant. Isn't that inspirational? Incredible. And indeed, as I think we all know, because remember I did my PhD when I was very, very young, and I'm about, I suppose, the age of a lot of our wonderful students now. And I think about how much more I would have enjoyed and loved the PhD if I'd done it now. And I was thinking about what's the reason for that. And I think if you were doing a PhD in inverted commas midlife, you understand the workforce. You understand the privilege of doing a PhD. You're able to manage your private life and your public life in a clearer way. You understand the truth of life, really. You also understand there is a direct correlation between working hard and having good results, which is always good, and you are skilled in balancing professional and personal responsibility. So it is a great time in terms of personal and professional skills to come into a doctoral program. You have what I suppose we cliched referred to as transferable skills, where you already have them coming into the program. And as I think we all know, we finish a PhD not by intelligence alone. You finish it via doggedness and also by intrinsic motivation. That's how you finish. Lots of clever people start a PhD, but you finish through intrinsic motivation and really having that fire, that desire, that doggedness that will get you through. So therefore, there are issues we do need to think about for this group, because there are also challenges involved in this group coming into the program, particularly from health and in education. And we see this particularly in clinical and professional experience. And what happens is we've got incredibly successful people coming into a PhD program who have been successful in a clinical environment. And therefore they assume incorrectly that that clinical environment is the same as a university. So it is very important for the students coming in to say, right, well, I was successful in this sphere, I'm now moving spheres, and the roles and the truths and the paradigms are different. So this is where it's very important for this group of students to separate out experience and expertise. So it's important that you respect your past. It's important that everybody, your supervisor, everybody respects your past, but understand that a PhD is conducted in the present. So it must be a present-oriented degree. Respect the past, respect the future. We'll get to the future in a second, but a good PhD student lives in the present, works a good day, and wakes up the next morning and works another good day. So think about the future, and how we think about the future is think about diversifying your skills. You've come into the PhD with fantastically important skill sets that most of us don't have, and that's terrific. But you're in the PhD for a reason. You're in the PhD to improve, to become a better version of yourself. And so therefore PD becomes crucial. So what I do with this group in particular is I say from week 1, I need you to look at job advertisements. I need you to look at the skill set that is being required for all sorts of jobs that you may not think you will do. And the reason for that is I need you to, right at the start of your program, conduct professional development that's not only what appears right on your topic, but may appear more peripheral. Those peripheral PD programs that we run are often future-proofing. So they're often the skills that we think you may need in the workforce in 3 years' time. So really be proactive and broad in your PD. That's what I would always say to this group of students. You have the time early in your candidature. So match the PD with where you think your life may go. Remember, at Flinders University and in all the wonderful universities around the world, we have hundreds of PD events and artefacts for you to use. And the reason we have so many is because our PhD students are so diverse. They're not the young man in the lab. They're not our wonderful 91-year-old student graduating in France. But that diversity of students requires a diversity of PD. And that's why so many different micro moments of learning are available, so that each student can slot them into their career. And do remember that if you are interested in academic life, the PhD is the standard entry point into an academic life. I have never, and I will never, hire a person into an academic job without a PhD. And the reason for that is, I don't have to. We live in a time of labour surplus. There are plenty of truly brilliant, fascinating, interesting people who have a PhD. So when they apply for a job, I hire them. To render yourself competitive, you have to have a PhD. As I've often said, when I'm doing a cull to create a shortlist, the first cull is who has a PhD, who doesn't. And often a third or half of the candidates are gone because they don't have a PhD. The moment you have a PhD, you're in the top half of candidates. Therefore, you need a PhD if you are going to work in a university, full stop. Also, many more of us now are working inside and outside a university at different points of our career. So we're in a university and then we take other roles in the public or the private sphere. So that's why you need that robust PD, so that you're able to move as smoothly and fluidly as the workplace requires of us all. A PhD and a great professional development program can give you a flexibility that no other program can provide for you. That's why the PhD employability is so high at the moment, because people in all sorts of employment opportunities and employers are starting to recognise the value of this 3-year qualification. The articles written about the midlife doctorate also raise the importance of credibility. I did want to just quickly mention that in the vlog too, particularly in health, can I say? So someone in the allied health professions who undertakes a midlife PhD, then is Dr. Smith, Dr. Brown, Dr. Raj, then they're able, of course, to continue and kick on in their career for the next stage. So the credibility issue is also important. Significantly too, find mentors, find peer support far outside of your supervisor. This is particularly important for you. Do not live in a silo. If someone is breathing, you can learn something from them. So don't live in a silo, don't live in a particular discipline, talk to lots of people, and you know what? Learn a great deal from them. There's all sorts of fantastic people in universities, and they can offer personal support, professional support in ways that we cannot even begin to imagine. Can I also say the overwhelming majority of our right bunches, the right bunch, our Friday morning writing group, the overwhelming majority of those people are in their 40s. So they get together from all the different disciplines from all over the world and write together for 30 minutes. And so they love that, and that creates that peer support and that relationship. And those students help each other get through. So it wasn't a matter of being in a particular discipline, it was the matter of learning from others and gaining support. So look for those collaborators, friends and colleagues. Also, I'd say to you, enjoy it. Enjoy the independence of that research. At this stage of your life, in your 40s, you've worked for the man for a long time. And I think we all know what that means. We've done the hard yakka, we've done the pretty heavy lifting for people that often we don't respect. And so we've worked for the man. And therefore, by the time you do a PhD at this point, you relish the freedom, you relish the opportunity, you understand the privilege of focusing a period of time on yourself and not necessarily having to continue to work for the man every day. So enjoy it and use it. It is a privilege. It's remarkable. So my final bit of the vlog this week just wants to offer an intervention in the language we're deploying in this discussion about the midlife PhD and how the debate is really being set up. Everyone's talking about the midlife PhD and indeed the midlife crisis. And they're conflating these terms, which is just bonkers. But of course, you only know you're in your midlife when you know you're going to die. You only know the midpoint when you know you're going to die. And we don't know when we're going to die, so therefore the midlife point is irrelevant. Boom. But also, can I state something really powerful about academic life? Academic life is extraordinary. It's a privilege. But what makes it so interesting is the best of scholars in our fields work through their 60s, their 70s, and yes, their 80s. The legendary scholar Edward Said referred to this as late style. Some of the scholars I respect most in my life do and have done their best work in their 70s and their 80s. And also, can I say, contracts are changing, consultancies are being available, the workforce and work itself is transforming. So retirement really doesn't exist in the form that a lot of us have in our heads from our parents' experience. So doing a PhD in your 40s is actually brilliant. It's robust because it's future-proofing your career. It's saying, right, in the mid-40s, I'm going to have a pause, I'm going to learn some interesting new skills, and then you know what? I'm going to go again. And that's brilliant. And that's because, team, the old model of life, of this is the period of your life where you do a bit of education, then you go into work, and then you retire, okay? So learning, working, retirement. That's nonsense. That's been nonsense for 20 years. So all those bits and pieces of our life now come and go in very interesting, non-linear ways. All of us, all the time, have to keep learning, keep in education. I mean, lifelong learning, the knowledge economy. They're cliches, but there's content behind them. We also all have to keep working in different ways. And the retirement that was experienced by our parents is just not going to happen. Full stop. My father, Big Kev, hi Big Kev, retired at 61. He's had a fantastic retirement. He's 90. It's brilliant. Am I going to retire at 61? Hell no. And look, I recommend to every single one of you to read what I think is a fantastic book by Chip Conley, Wisdom at Work. Wisdom at Work, how to reinvent the second half of your career. Now, Conley's important because he talks about the second, the third, and the fourth acts of your working life. He describes this age as, quote, and I love this, young enough to take up surfing, old enough to know what's important in life, end of quote. Brilliant. So this period of our lives involves a reprioritization of what is important. This involves a new type of leadership, a new type of interest in big ideas, in words like disruption and innovation, not used as cliches, but used with content behind them. So we need to think about what this mode of working and learning and living is like. Because as Conley stated, quote, "We'll live to be 100, but can we afford it? Probably not." End of quote. Focuses the mind, doesn't it? So therefore we're creating new relationships here between learning, working and retiring. Building reputations with intent, with authenticity. Building collaborative bridges beyond disciplines, beyond paradigms, beyond institutions, and continuing to learn, not as millennials, but as perennials. So this innovation is incredibly important that we're talking about today. It can change a nation, actually. And this commitment to a different type of living is also important, because the PhD is the pivot of that different way of learning, that different way of living, that different way of making a quid. It is important, I think, that we let go of the assumptions of the outcomes that we thought how our life would be. That's just not going to happen. We have to select a supervisor who has experience with this particular group of students and understands the goals, the outcomes, how to create a proper professional development portfolio for this group. And right at the start, I want you all to look at the jobs that you may apply for in 3 years' time and start to match the PD with that possible prospective job. And I wanted to finish the vlog this week for our new year, Happy New Year, with a statement from Mary Oliver. Are you breathing just a little and calling it a life? I read that quote every single morning. Are you breathing just a little and calling it a life? This is the year. This is the time to work out what you stand for. What is meaningful to you? What is important to you? If you're breathing just a little and calling it a life, maybe it's time to reboot, reconfigure, and transform. So maybe this is the year to take a really big breath, gulp in life, and make a decision to use a PhD to create a different future for you, for your family, and yes, for this nation. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tia.